The sun is shining, the weather is sweet. Ladies and gentlemen, I have purchased a heavily degraded, abandoned woodland forest for the cheapest price I could get. But before we get started, always remember, Earth is my planet.
Earth is my planet.
So if you guys tuned into the last video I released, I was contemplating purchasing 4 acres of land for $85,000 within an hour of downtown Houston. And I'm proud to say I have made that purchase. With that being said, you guys left a ton of meaningful comments, a lot of great advice. A lot of you guys wanted to dissuade me from purchasing the land just based off the looks in and of themselves. But with that being said, I never mentioned the purpose that I would be using this land for. So I recently got a survey done on it, and it actually ended up being short of 4 acres. It was more like 3 acres, and that is why you always have to get your land surveyed so you know exactly what you're paying for, where the boundaries are, and how much bang you truly are getting for your buck. But this area is kind of like a bottomland. It is in a 100-year floodplain, which means that every year there is a 1% chance that the land does flood. Now, it is near a bayou, which is amazing for soil fertility and for the abundance of water that actually is present on this land. But also, as the comments laid out, building in a floodplain is not usually advised, especially out here in the Houston, Texas area where hurricanes can run rampant, and Hurricane Harvey definitely did flood a ton of the region. But luckily for me, this property is only 30 minutes away from my house, so I would not be building on it. So you may be asking yourself, Paul, what are you going to do with this land? Well, I'm gonna do a ton of things. Since I don't need to build on it, this is truly gonna be my garden paradise and oasis, my escape to recreate and get in touch with nature. And I'm going to restore this bottomland habitat. I'm gonna restore the prairie system that used to be here natively by removing invasive tree species, by planting amazing beneficial trees to wildlife, by clearing the area, building swales and all types of ponds and water features to bring in migrating birds that fly across the Gulf of Mexico during the winter and come back in the spring. This is going to be a convenience store for birds, for wildlife. I'm going to try and attract as many different species as I can onto this land, and simultaneously I'm going to plant a ton of fruit trees as well and create a permaculture food forest system where I have a little bit more land to play with. With that being said, I still am going to maintain my suburban food forest because I feel like that is a great project and a nice display just to show you guys that it is possible to create an amazing, sustainable, productive garden on a small lot. But this area is going to be full of adventure, full of different missions, and I predominantly am only going to plant native species on this land so I can bring it back to its full potential, and so I can create, once again, an amazing environment just to serve, to educate, and to show you guys that it is possible to buy some degraded land and to enhance it. Now, this property was cheap for the area. So within about 45 minutes of my house, the cheapest that I could find acreage wise was about 3 acres, and that typically runs $125,000 minimum. I looked at a 4-acre plot that was $130,000. There were 12 bids on it. It got snapped up really quickly. Someone definitely did pay probably $30,000 over asking price because I offered $10,000 over asking price, and I always have wanted to be debt free. So hence why I bought this property for $77,000, because again, after the survey, it was a little bit short. They listed it for around 4 acres. There hasn't been a survey done since Stephen F. Austin colonized the area. This was a 65-acre tract back in the 1800s, and now it has been divided, and my acreage is a little over 3 acres, which is enough for me. Personally, if I ever need to expand or get more, I can sell my house and do so. I could sell my house and build on this land. I also could build a small cabin. I could have this be a bug out kind of off-grid location, which I think would be really cool. It's close enough to the city to easily get to and access, and also you don't have to drive through Houston and all the traffic to get here from my residence, because I love nothing more than a peaceful road trip, no cortisol levels spiking as I'm stuck in traffic. So that is another added benefit of the location of this property. Now, in terms of wildlife that is already on this land, there's deer, there's whitetails, there's raccoons, there's possums, there's definitely snakes. And my neighbor said that someone caught a cougar on trail cam. I don't know if that's urban legend, speculation. I personally do need to see the footage, but pumas, cougars, mountain lions, they're all synonymous. Whatever you guys want to call these big cats do typically traverse down bayous. And as I mentioned, there is a bayou about a mile to, I don't know, maybe a mile and a half away from the property, which is cool. I may actually take you guys out there in a video because my neighbor has not been here in 10 plus years. There is a piece of property that is landlocked next to mine, which no one has access to develop, which is cool. And hopefully whenever that goes for sale, I can purchase that, have a nice 6-acre plot, and then get the area ag exempted, or wildlife exempted. So that way my taxes are low. Taxes on this, someone did comment that, are only $1,000. And personally, I feel like being close to the water and just the aesthetic of the creekside in and of itself is definitely an added benefit to this area. Now you guys can see this understory is quite severe. So I am going to have to spend a lot of elbow grease, effort, and time clearing the area, getting rid of the invasive species to make room for the things that I want to grow here. But again, man, this is a life aspiration that is fulfilled relatively on a budget. As I previously stated, I did not want to spend a ton of money on property or drive really far because I want to be as involved in my kids' lives as possible, especially if they have games or events on the weekends. It's easy for me to travel 30 minutes versus a couple of hours. I did see a property that was 10 acres, which ideally is what I wanted, and that was an hour and a half away. I made that drive a couple times and I just told myself, man, I do not like being in a car this much personally. I'd rather use that time to get down on it and to work the land. My lady's family does own 3 acres, and I feel like that is plenty enough space for me. And this property is a very odd shape in and of itself. It actually has a large peninsula just jutting off of it that leads to a lake, or I guess a large pond, where a ton of giant bird species do frequent. I have seen them munching in the area, and you guys can see behind me is the waterway, and it does go very far, ultimately reaching that pond, which ultimately drains off into the bayou. So I probably will take a walk with you guys all the way down there eventually, but I'm just excited to get started with this process. I got into gardening during the pandemic and I absolutely love it. And the pandemic also did show me that our food resources sometimes are up in the air. When natural disaster strikes, people panic buy, and when you see society behave in that way, it does make you want to have a piece of land that's not too far from everything, but is far enough where you can be low key, have a ton of food resources, have a nice water source, and be able to live freely if push comes to shove. That is ideally what I would use this land for as well. So it does cover a whole bunch of different goals that I have in mind. I'm excited to get started with the process. And if you guys aren't subscribed already, please go ahead and do so you don't miss a single video along the way. Also, shout out all the comments, man. You guys were definitely looking out for my best interests. I didn't state my intentions up front, but I am glad that now you guys know what I am going to utilize this piece of property for. And I'm very stoked to get started. This is a ton of work. I'm 30 years young, and this is gonna be a lifelong project of mine, I surmise, and something I can pass on to my kids, or ultimately, as someone commented, they ain't making any more land. So I could hold it, pretty much do nothing, probably sell it, and in worst case scenario, break even. I mean, 77,000 is less than freaking some damn trucks nowadays, which is insane. So I don't feel too bad about splurging once in my life on something like this. I got a ton of money saved. I luckily have already been blessed to have paid off my house, and owning my own business, the future is always in an odd balance. So I didn't want to go out of bounds and spend more than need be. And yeah, I feel like I captured the land I want on a budget, and it's time to get started. So let's go along together on this journey. Any advice is always welcome in the comments, and until next time, remember, Earth is my planet.
Earth is my planet.
Peace.
Killing these songs, leaving a bloody life I roost to. And I'm in it to win it, so I'm somebody that you should get used to.